Hello everyone, welcome to the best place for the best takes. I'm Benjamin Cure. This is the Benjamin Cure Show. I'm so excited to come back to you on another Thursday afternoon. I'm in Miami, Florida. As you know, it's a gorgeous day. And for those of you who may have heard, Hurricane Ian has been making its way throughout the state of Florida. Some of our neighbors in Tampa and Orlando and that mid-region of Florida have been very affected by flooding, by damage, by tornadoes, by waterspouts. I saw some of the videos, honestly, this morning and last night. Some things captured by homeowners, by neighbors, and it's pretty devastating. I think this is going to be really bad, and you're going to see the effects of it for a long time in some of those areas, and I hope they can recover quickly. So I just wanted to mention that as we opened our show. I thought it would be insensitive not to mention what's going on up north. But in some other news and some sporting news on today's show, I'm going to be going over a preview of the Week 4 in the NFL. And don't think I forgot, don't think I'm running away. I am going to address the Jimmy G blunders and struggles in Week 3. I'm going to talk about the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson and their head coach, Nathaniel Hackett, who I have barely said the name of on this show throughout the season. But trust me, I think he deserves a lot of credit for the things that are going wrong in Denver right now. And I'm going to discuss why. Also, I'm a Miamian. I don't want to show any bias, but the Miami Dolphins are getting better and better. I have some thoughts on that. I haven't mentioned them on this show yet. They had an excellent Week 2 against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. A crazy comeback that I was watching live. They did their thing against the Bills this past week, and that was a true test. I'll discuss it, and you'll see why maybe I am not overreacting just yet about that news. I'll also discuss Aaron Rodgers. He's a part of our stories. Nonetheless, let's get started with the show. It's no secret that on this show I talk a lot about greatness. And I never miss an opportunity to say there's a difference between being good and being great. And there's a difference between being great and being the greatest. I talk about Tom Brady a lot on this show, the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest football player of all time, the GOAT of the NFL. I've talked about Michael Jordan. I've talked about LeBron James. Wherever you stand on that debate, I don't really know, but I've discussed both nonetheless. And I think when you're talking about greatness, there's something that we don't take into account a lot of times. When we're watching greatness, especially as sports fans, sometimes the guy at the helm makes it look too easy. Tom Brady goes to the Buccaneers the first year, wins the Super Bowl. It seems like that might be a recipe for success in the NFL. You have a good coach, a talented roster, but you don't have the right guy at center. You know what? Maybe we go out there and we get a veteran quarterback, whether it's free agency or trade market. In the case of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it was a free agency move. But the next year, it was a trade. The Rams, excellent roster, didn't have the right guy at the helm, discovered it too late after they gave him a massive extension. Nonetheless, Sean McVay made a massive blockbuster trade, got Matthew Stafford. What happened? First year, home field advantage for the Super Bowl. They get to the big game, they win it. Oh, wow, is there a common trend here? Is this an actual legitimate way of winning Super Bowls? Get a veteran quarterback, put him into a roster and experience immediate success? That's not quite the case. Let's slow down here. What the Rams did was incredible. Almost no one could outscore them in the NFL. Maybe the Dallas Cowboys had the leading offense in the league last year. Maybe Kansas City on a single game could outscore them. But the Rams were explosive. You could not put up more points than them. Cooper Kupp as a wide receiver was an MVP candidate in many people's eyes. Some think he should have won the damn award. I mean, that was just incredible to watch last season. They found immediate success even in the regular season, and they never lost their way. But let's not forget, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their Super Bowl run were not this undefeated juggernaut. Oh my gosh, nobody can beat those guys during their Super Bowl year. If you were asking guys around the league, analysts, reporters, Week 8 of Tampa Bay Super Bowl year, hey, who's going to win the big game? A lot of them were not saying the Bucs were going to win. That was a team that did not catch its second wind. It didn't start working together. It wasn't a successful product until after their bye, which came late in the season. I want to say it was a Week 12, Week 13, Week 14 bye. Nonetheless, it was late in the season. Then Tom Brady really sat down with the coaches, sat down with the players, and the rest is history. They become unstoppable from that moment on, after the bye week. So there's a common thread here. Success with veteran quarterbacks in the first year. And I'll admit, I kind of expected that with Russell Wilson. A lot of people did. Veteran quarterback, very talented, has had moments of greatness, maybe not considered one of the greatest of all time, but definitely an excellent quarterback talent, who we have seen as being limited by his situation for years, a la Tom Brady at the end of his New England run, Matthew Stafford the entire time he was in Detroit. Let's move him to a very talented place, new faces, new talent, younger guys in the perimeter. Let's give him some weapons to play with. And people expected this immediate success. And now that we're not seeing it, a lot of people are questioning whether or not it's Russell Wilson's fault. While I don't believe Russell Wilson is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, I do think he is an excellent quarterback talent. I think his legacy speaks for itself. I think it's unfortunate that the situation with Pete Carroll rotted the way that it did over the years. I think it's unfortunate that the Legion of Boom ended before it even started, and we only saw one ring come out of that. That's the credit of Tom Brady, the Patriots defense, and Bill Belichick, of course. But I do feel for Russell Wilson in that situation. Now he's finally getting a chance to blossom. He got a massive contract, big-time commitment from the owners. And we are seeing that they are not doing well. There are some big-time struggles going on in Denver. And people are asking, hey, whose fault is it? And everybody is rushing to point the finger, particularly at Russell Wilson. And I think you're wrong. A man who I have barely named on this show, who I've only referred to as the Broncos head coach, Nathaniel Hackett, is to blame for the Broncos' struggles. You know, a lot of people were joking around about how when Chris Collinsworth was calling one of the early games for the Packers, he talked about the loss of Nathaniel Hackett. And he had asked Aaron Rodgers in a pregame interview session with the commentators, hey, what did he do for you? What was he like as a coach? What are you going to miss about him? And Aaron Rodgers didn't talk about his creative mindset or his ability to see things that just weren't there or his game plans. He talked about that he was a fun guy to laugh with, to have fun, and to throw darts with. Oh boy, this is one of those situations where I think Denver got it wrong at the head coach position. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett is one of those guys that has benefited from an incredibly successful quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, as much as I criticize him for not necessarily being a risk taker, for not embracing young stars or teammates, for being a little bit self-centered when it comes to terms like finances and his teammates, for all of that, Aaron Rodgers elevates the people around him. He makes average wide receivers look pretty damn good. He makes excellent wide receivers look like they're in a tier of their own, like Devontae Adams. Not to say that they don't have talent, but he most certainly elevates the team and those around him. And I think Nathaniel Hackett, just like Matt LaFleur, if I'm being honest, is taking credit and is getting credit for something that he doesn't deserve the credit for. Something that is not his direct accomplishment. Aaron Rodgers was the heart and soul of the Packers offense. He still is. He finds a way to perform even in the strangest, most underdog situations in the regular season. I do not believe him to be a clutch player. I think it falls apart come playoff time when they face real adversity, but nobody can deny Aaron Rodgers is incredibly talented, and he gets it done in the regular season, and it is hard to beat him. Look at his record in the past couple of years. 13-3, 13 and now it may be 13-4 because of the extra game. Whatever it may be, always an excellent regular season record. Nathaniel Hackett may have rode the coattails of success of Aaron Rodgers, and he may have done that all the way into a head coaching position. Because what I'm seeing right now doesn't show me that Nathaniel Hackett is a good head coach. If I'm Nathaniel Hackett, if I'm a Denver Broncos head coach, what does my game plan consist of? Forget the amount of money that I just paid Russell Wilson. Just look at the talent. If I have a guy like Russell Wilson, I'm going to game plan to his strengths. I'm going to run a ton of RPOs. I'm going to get the run game involved with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon behind me. I'm going to use my weapons. I'm going to give Russell Wilson the captain's hat. Hey, you want to hand it off? Go ahead. If you see an open guy, you throw it. If you want to keep it, do a quarterback keeper. And you want to use your legs in the pocket for a little bit, roll out to the right, roll out to the left, wait for the pocket to break down, get a little more time to see if something develops downfield. That is Russell Wilson's bread and butter. I mean, you look at Russell Wilson's greatest plays from the last 10 years, across his career, at any point in time, what is it? It usually begins with a collapsed pocket, Russell Wilson scrambling out to the right or the left side, and throwing a deep ball, an absolute dime, to one of his receivers for a touchdown or for a massive first down, or at least a massive gain. That is Russell Wilson's legacy. It is being able to roll out what you're witnessing right now with Kyler Murray. That is what Russell Wilson was loved for at the beginning of his career and what he is still very capable of doing. So, why is Nathaniel Hackett not game planning for that? Why does he not have more RPOs? Why isn't he allowing Russell Wilson to blossom into who Russell Wilson is? Give him time to grow. Let him roll out. Let him scramble a little bit. Russell Wilson is an elite quarterback when he begins to play on his feet. When he is forced to improvise. That is when Russell Wilson succeeds. That's where the legend of Russell Wilson comes from. So why is Nathaniel Hackett not game planning, not scheming, not making routes that benefit his star quarterback, who he is stuck with for the next 7 years, if Nathaniel Hackett is a good enough coach to even make it that far down the line? The Broncos have a massive problem in their hands right now, and it is not Russell Wilson. It is a Nathaniel Hackett problem. How are you not going to game plan for your quarterback, for your star of your franchise, when you know he can win, and you know how he can win, but you refuse to adapt your game plan and what you do to be creative, to come up with those new schemes specifically for him? If things end up going great in Denver, it's going to be because of Russell Wilson. And for that to happen, Nathaniel Hackett has got to game plan and has got to adapt to Russell Wilson's strengths. This is not Aaron Rodgers. This is not those plays that you call in Madden rookie mode. Come up with something creative. Be a head coach in the NFL. Otherwise, you won't be one for much longer. I was getting a lot of texts at around 8:20, 9 o'clock-ish on Sunday night when Jimmy G was going up against Russell Wilson. Because I have been a fierce defender of not only Russell Wilson and the fact that he was going to succeed. I mean, I put the Broncos in my top 10 in the Ben's Best list earlier this year. But I was also getting texts about somebody else that I have fiercely defended on this show, Jimmy Garoppolo. And a lot of people were ready to pounce. People who know that I defend Jimmy Garoppolo, that I am a fan of Jimmy Garoppolo, and people who watch this show. And I was ready for it, and I game planned for it. And don't think I'm going to run from this situation, because I'm not. Let's take a deep breath. Have we not seen some of our favorite quarterbacks this season struggle? Did Joe Burrow not look a little bit rusty at the start of the season because he missed 11 days, or because he missed training camp with that surgery? Has Brady not looked himself because of the situation at home and because of the 11-day absence during preseason? Is that not showing right now big time for him and that offense? I'm trying to think of other quarterbacks we've seen struggle. We've seen a ton. Matthew Stafford didn't look immediately great. Starters didn't play during the regular season. That's the Rams' philosophy. They looked like they struggled a little bit. Aaron Rodgers does not play during the preseason, had a very rough week 1 against a formidable but not great team in the Minnesota Vikings. Jimmy Garoppolo was not allowed to have a playbook in his possession this offseason. Did you know that? He wasn't allowed to practice on the same field as the starters. He wasn't allowed to have the players come and run routes with him. He didn't have George Kittle running around there. And they were playing catch or anything like that. Jimmy Garoppolo was practicing on a separate field after reporting to training camp because the 49ers had every intention, at least we thought, of trading him or of cutting him. They didn't want him to have any sort of advantage, have the playbook. They wanted Trey Lance to be their guy, and that hurt Jimmy. That hurt him big time. Yes, this was an awful, almost unforgivable performance upon immediately watching it from Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, so many bad plays, so many blunders. The Dan Orlovsky in the end zone. Immediately on that same play, the pick six that would have been from, I think, Bradley Chubb. Disaster. But let's not pretend like the 49ers supported him. They didn't want him training on the same field. They didn't want to give him the playbook. They didn't want to give him the benefit of the doubt. They said, hey, go have your surgery and we'll talk after. And they neglected him. And it shows. They are lucky that Jimmy Garoppolo went into a game where Trey Lance was injured with no expectation to play. He was a backup. And was forced into the situation and still won. And he still played well. Without George Kittle, mind you, who people have always said, oh, that's Jimmy G's security blanket. He did just fine without him in week 2. He'll do just fine moving forward. I think people are overreacting. I think that first initial game was bad for a lot of quarterbacks. We're just seeing it now in week 3 because we haven't seen Jimmy Garoppolo in several months on the playing field as a starter. I think it's unfair, the judgment that people are rushing to destroy Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a formidable quarterback. He had an awful game that will not fly moving forward, but there's nobody that is formidable enough to back him up. Do things go wrong? Trey Lance is out for the rest of the season, or at least until the very end of it, is what we're hearing right now. He will get better. He will improve. It was a bad game. And by the way, for all of Denver's problems, they are no scrubs. That defense has been great for years. Patrick Surtain, I mean, they've got some good guys. Bradley Chubb, it's all coming together now. They made some, I want to say they made some offseason acquisitions. That is a very good defense. A top 10 by many people's regards. I haven't ranked my defenses yet, but I plan on doing so. I think they will probably make it, even with all their struggles. The point is, whether it was against bums or against a top 10 defense, Jimmy Garoppolo struggled. It shouldn't happen again. It was bad. But let's not act like some of our favorite quarterbacks, or at least some of the best quarterbacks, haven't experienced the same thing this season. Take a deep breath, give it a second, and watch Jimmy Garoppolo grow and flourish as the weeks go on. I'm not saying he's great. I'm not saying he's an excellent quarterback. I'm not saying he's top 10. I've never said that as much as I've supported him. He is what he is. At the end of the day, the 49ers wanted to trade away and trade off him. That is very clear. But Jimmy Garoppolo is not as bad as people make it out to be. And I don't think that performance shows just how good Jimmy is or how bad he is. I think he's somewhere in the middle. And I think that will show in the coming weeks. It is no secret that I am from Miami, born and raised, that I am in a city where the Miami Dolphins are all the talk in the world. Yet I have not addressed them on this show yet. I didn't put them in my top 10 when there was all of that offseason hype. They were not in the Ben's Best list. They may make it this next time around when I do it week 8, week 9-ish of the NFL season. Because wow, does that roster look good. I was watching live when they were playing against the Ravens during that comeback as the fourth quarter opened. And I remember they showed Mike McDaniel on the sideline. And he was talking to some of the players, and he almost looked directly at the camera when he turned to face the field. And he just had this look of determination, like, it's not over. He was still game planning to win. He wasn't game planning to make this a respectable game. He was scheming in his mind as a young offensive head coach that is absolutely excellent. I think Mike McDaniel, as much as I feel for Brian Flores, as much as I didn't initially like the move, I think Mike McDaniel's a million times a better coach in 2022 in the NFL than Brian Flores. Unfortunately, that's just the situation. Brian Flores came from the Belichick coaching tree, a defensive head coach, which is becoming more and more obsolete as the league moves to an offensive game plan with younger, even younger coaches. Brian Flores isn't old. He's not an old guy who's been around the league for a long time. He's a relatively young guy who has a good head on his shoulders, who clearly wanted to win, tried to make things work, but could not. It just doesn't work like that in the NFL. You can't force your game plan to work if you're a defensive head coach. To win in today's day and age with a rookie or at least a young quarterback, it requires an offensive-minded head coach. And Mike McDaniel is just that. Incredibly creative. It's the perfect system for Tua. You're not asking too much of him, but he succeeds so well because of the space that is created when he's on the field, when Tyreek Hill is running those slant routes, those deep routes, when Jalen Waddle is that security blanket, when Mike Gesicki is coming over as another security blanket. Hey, just drop it off to me. There's a lot of ways to win in that Miami Dolphins offense. Credit to Mike McDaniel, credit to the offensive weapons, credit to the offensive line, which has gotten better, and of course, credit to Tua. I didn't want to talk about them after that Baltimore win because I was like, that was good, but their true test is going to be this next upcoming week. And I didn't want to rush to conclusions with them. But after 3 weeks of football, after them being one of the only 3-0 teams left, I think it's safe to say that the Dolphins are legit. I don't like them over the Bills. I'm just going to be honest. I know a lot of people in Miami, a lot of people in the media are going to be mad at that. But I heard a great quote the other day. Your standings your rankings should not look like your standings. You catch where I'm going with this? The wins and losses per week should not necessarily directly reflect in who you think is the best team. Yes, are we just coming off a week 3 with the Miami Dolphins beat divisional opponent and Super Bowl hopeful, the Buffalo Bills, with the best Vegas odds to win the big game? Yes, they did. It is a legit win. It was incredible to watch. I could not believe the Miami Dolphins won that game. I still think the Bills are a better roster. And I also think, here's another thing that I'm not superstitious, but I do look for trends. It is very hard to beat a team twice in a single season. When the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills meet again, I would be shocked if the Miami Dolphins won. And if they made a third time, going into an AFC, let's just say, an AFC game, like for the whole thing, the divisional game, I wouldn't see the Dolphins winning that game too. You're telling me the Dolphins are going to win 3 games in a row in the same season against the Buffalo Bills, this Buffalo Bills team? I don't see it happening. They're going to drop one of those games or both of them, assuming that third game happens. My point being, the Buffalo Bills are a much stronger roster still. They had a lot of players out. They had all of their DBs, like 5 of them were out during that game against the Dolphins. It is a legit win for the Dolphins. I don't think it shoots them above the Buffalo Bills in the rankings. I do think it is a very exciting time, however, in Miami. It is a very exciting time to be a Dolphins fan, and I understand and I can now buy into the hype that they had during the offseason, because that is a legit team. I don't love Tua. I don't think he's a superstar, but you know what? Tying these things all together now, Mike McDaniel came from the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. They didn't need, I've always said it, Kyle Shanahan is unique and a great coach because in today's day and age, in today's NFL, he still wins and finds a way to win without a superstar quarterback, which is hard to do. Mike McDaniel is doing the same thing in Miami. And he makes Tua look like a superstar. That's the craziest part. They disguise the weaknesses of Tua. And you can see the massive improvement that Tua made in that system from week 1 to week 2 and the improvements that he made from week 2 to week 3. He's only going to look better in the coming weeks. It's only going to feed to the lore of Tua, but I don't think he's an MVP. I don't think he's a superstar quarterback. But as long as Mike McDaniel's coaching, he might be the quarterback for Miami. That's the way I see it. I don't think he's a superstar, but Tua could very well play for the Miami Dolphins for the next 10 years and have Miami Dolphins fans be very happy with his production, because that's the system that Mike McDaniel runs. Now, I'm talking 10 years in advance. We will see what happens in the next 10 years. I would be almost 30 years old. So, a lot of time between now and then. But I think Tua can be successful in Miami. I think Mike McDaniel can be successful in Miami. And it is a very exciting time to be a Miami Dolphins fan. I think the hype train is real. And I think they deserve it. And I'm going to talk about them now in one of my later stories, Bengals, Miami Dolphins. So we've got a real exciting matchup to open up the NFL Week 4. It's a primetime game, Thursday Night Football on Prime. Miami Dolphins versus the Cincinnati Bengals, who play at home. Especially good after this hurricane has swept through. I don't know if they would have been able to have played it in Miami, at least safely. So that game is taking place tonight in Cincinnati. What do I think? Now, my Week 4 picks were not good. Or my Week 3 picks were not good. It was absolutely atrocious. It was not a good week to be me. I went 7-9, I believe, with my picks. I had a losing record. It was not good. I know I finished with 7 wins. Not my brightest or proudest moment as an NFL fan, as an analyst, but it was a rough week, I think, for a lot of people. For Christ's sake, the Colts beat the Chiefs. I don't know how many people could have predicted that one. But I think this is an exciting matchup tonight. I think it's very telling. I think it shows you where the AFC is at. If the Dolphins win this game, I'm not saying it's more impressive than the Buffalo Bills win, but it very well may be more impressive than the Buffalo Bills win. A short week, Miami, their defense played over 90 snaps in that Miami Heat. For those of you who don't know, go look at the temperature or take a flight down to Miami. It was hot. It is a burner right now in middle to the end of September here in Miami. That was one that just, I think, destroyed the cardio for every player involved. Those players were exhausted. I think Miami Dolphins' defense is in a weakened state. I don't love them going into this game. I think Joe Burrow is finding his footing after struggling. I could see the Miami Dolphins going 3-1, and I'll still be very happy. And unless it's like a blowout win for the Bengals and the Dolphins absolutely collapse, I'm not going to lose any faith in the Dolphins. As a matter of fact, the Dolphins can pretty much only go up in my mind. If they manage to win this game, if they make it competitive, short week, after all that energy exerted in a divisional game, very passionate, a lot of emotions running high, that would be just insane. I think Joe Burrow, the Bengals, are finding their way. I think they take advantage of the short week better than the Miami Dolphins do. I think they'll look a little better, but I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not super passionate about this take in terms of the Bengals winning. I wouldn't be shocked if the Miami Dolphins find a way to win, and it will only add to them and their legacy and their lore this season, at least in my mind. So I got Bengals beating the Miami Dolphins. I don't think it's a blowout game by any means necessary, unless the Dolphins win. Then I think the Dolphins blow them out. I don't think it's a close one if they do end up winning. Kansas City at a 4 o'clock game versus the Buccaneers being played in Tampa. What we know right now is going to be played in Tampa. Might be played on a neutral field. The NFL is reviewing the situation with the Hurricane Ian. We talked about it earlier in the show. I think Tom Brady is really struggling right now. I think his head's not in it. I think there's too many injuries to overcome as well on that offensive line, interior offensive line, where Brady's bread and butter, where he loves to have good guys. They're not that great. They're not that talented on the offensive line. A lot of injuries in the perimeter. You do get Mike Evans back. But, it's tough because I've always said Tom Brady is not a guy that's going to lose bad twice in a row. And for Kansas City, I've always said this about Mahomes. Mahomes doesn't suffer back-to-back bad losses. That was a bad loss against the Colts. And they had it until the very end. If I had to take a guess, I'd say Mahomes makes it out of this one better than Brady and the Bucs do. I think Kansas City wins this one. Not by a lot. Not super passionate about this take. But I think Kansas City does win. I think Tampa still has stuff to figure out. I'm already forewarning you. You're going to hear the narrative. Oh, is Tampa Bay done? Is their season a bust? They're 2-2. They're struggling. They're just fine. They're going to be just fine. They're going to go 2-2, and then they'll go 3-2. I can almost guarantee it because of their Week 5 game. We're not in week 5 yet. We're not going to discuss that yet. But if you really want to, you can look at the schedule and see for yourself. I think Tampa will do just fine. I do think they will finish week 4 2-2. I think the Kansas City Chiefs will finish their week 3-1. I think they're going to be just fine. Kansas City wins the game. Mahomes throws 250 plus yards, I assume. I don't think that's such a bold take. I think he's a superstar, and I think he'll get it done. I think this game means a lot to both of the teams. I mean, the last time they met, let's also not forget this. The last time they met was in the Super Bowl, where the Bucs annihilated the Chiefs. By halftime, the game was over. So I think those emotions are also running high. Mahomes wants to get back at him. The Chiefs do as well, even though those teams aren't exactly the same. They are looking for their revenge. I think they just have more gas in the tank. They have more depth. They have more talent right now than the Bucs do. And Brady just doesn't look like he's in it right now. So for that reason, I'm taking Kansas City over the Bucs. It's going to be an excellent week. I'm very excited for the games. Hopefully I don't go 0-2 in my fantasy leagues this week because I did last week. Hopefully my picks look better this time. Next week, we'll see. Until next time, until next Thursday, I'm wishing us all the best of luck in fantasy football. Wishing you all the best as you go into your weekend. You wrap your work week and going into the next week. Until next time, I'm Benjamin Cure. This is the Benjamin Cure Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll see you next week.